Hey everybody. In this next video, I wanted to give you another prophetic dream that the Lord had given me. This one came from around 2014, 2015. At that time, ISIS was really active in Syria, and Christians were suffering at their hands, and it was in the news media. And at that time, the four blood moons tetrad of 2014, 2015 was on a lot of people's minds, and we were looking at possible rapture dates associated with those events. At that time, I received a dream. I received it in two parts. This will be the first part. And in that first part of that dream, I had a voiceover in my head playing of like a newsreel, and the dream played out like a video, and it was like a movie from the 1940s and 50s. I was looking at a map of Texas. I was looking at it to the west. I was on the east side of the state, and I was looking down on it from above at an angle. And Texas was being invaded by an army in black coming from the Mexican border. Down on the border, there was an army amassed in black, and the news reports coming through my head were that they were advancing across the border and that they were taking over town after town after town. And I could see on the map that they were coming up as thick, dark lines up the highways from Texas, from the south to the north. And at the time, I lived in central Texas, and so I was very concerned. And in central Texas, we have Fort Hood, which is the world's largest military base in the free world. And I knew that the armies were deployed and that there was nobody there to stop them. And I remember hearing like news reports, another city had fallen, and that the governor of Texas was calling for forces to rise up and to stand against this, but they were unstoppable. And as they were moving up, you could just hear the screams and the terror of people from all these towns and cities. And then you could see the little vehicles start to go up one at a time, and then it would continue as a black line further and further towards San Antonio and Houston. And at this time, I knew that they were unstoppable. I knew that they were taking over the towns and cities that had access to oil, and that they were going to, use that oil to further their advance. And so at that time, I guess I have enough time to move into part two. They were coming up north, and as I said, I was in central Texas. So north of my city is a town called Gatesville. And in my dream, I found myself in a place I'd never been before. And that place I understood to be Gatesville to the north. And it was rather quiet. It was a rather quiet, overcast afternoon. And I found myself going with a whole lot of people to a location to meet. There was going to be a meeting or a gathering to discuss ISIS coming and what we were going to do. Not ISIS, but this force, this black, dark force that was coming up from the south. And so there were, town elders and leaders there, and the police and the sheriffs were there, and everyone was going to this building. There was a huge parking lot, and then there was this one building by itself, and everybody was headed that way to go talk and meet and discuss what was about to happen or what we could do about it. And the parking lot was filled with cars, filled with trucks, and a bunch of cowboys, were there, and we were all headed that way. And all of a sudden I heard people shout, and they were saying, they're here, they're coming up the highway. And to my right, now I was facing north, and I looked to the northeast, there was an exit from the parking lot to get out onto the highway. And so people were jumping in their vehicles and trying to exit out that one exit there, as well as the other exits in the other directions. And no one could get away because they were trapped. Everyone was trapped at this location, and we understood that the army was coming up. They were coming through, and they were going to meet us there, and we would be trapped. So I ran the opposite direction looking for my truck, and I found my truck, and I took off the opposite direction, driving through a field. It was a vacant parcel of land, and I was driving through it for my life, heading the opposite direction. And then I sought refuge. I turned to the south, and I found a trailer park. And I knew that I couldn't outrun them, but I thought maybe I could hide. And so I wasn't familiar with the trailer park, but I decided that I could hide there and wait it out. And when I did, I pulled into a home, and I was welcomed into the home, and somebody waved me in, and there was a little old lady there, and she had a television, a little small television, and she was watching the news, and she said, "Take a look." And I looked at the TV, and there were four-wheel drive trucks and Toyota trucks and small pickups driving around city streets all across Texas, and they all had black flags waving behind them. And she said, "Look at this." And she said it was in my mailbox. And in her mailbox, she had a little black flag, which appeared to be like the ISIS flag with white lettering on it, although I couldn't make out the characters. And she said, "I found this." And I said, "Yes, they're trying to intimidate us, and they're trying to reach out to us, but we can't give in." And then I looked out through the window, and I peeked out through the blinds, and I could see young people were gathering on the corners of the city streets. And these young people were looking to join up with them. And so a truck would stop with a black flag, and they would pick up these teens and children, and they would load them up, and they would drive off. And another group of teens would come, and another truck would come, and they would drive off. And I knew soon they would be looking for all of us to find out who was in resistance and who was not going to comply. And the children of America were being recruited to do the will of this army that had come. At the time, I believed it to be related to ISIS, the dream. At the time, I believed it to be related to a possible invasion by Middle Eastern forces because our border was so lack with security. It's now my understanding, I've come to realize that no, this black force is already here in the United States, and they're already against the government and the values that many of us hold dear. We saw it with Antifa, I think it is, and the use of their militant tactics and the wearing of the black uniform. It's a dark force. It's a satanic force. And when and if the United States is attacked, this type of activity, this type of group will be in play. And many young people, many disillusioned young people will be joining up and looking for something that they can actively be involved in. And they're going to turn on their neighbors and their mothers and their fathers. And so I wanted to put this out there as a warning. I wanted to let you all know what I had received. This was a number of years ago, but I believe that it's very pertinent to the day, in fact, in which we're living right now. So I want to tell you, God bless you. I want to pray that you will draw near to the Lord in this time. And I want to remind you that Jesus is, in fact, coming soon. God bless.